presentation. To start off, in this presentation I'm going to analyse the differences and similarities between the British film industry model and the Hollywood film industry model. To do this, I'm going to use the example of a traditional British film that has been made into a Hollywood remake because of its past success or critical acclaim. The two examples I'll be using are Get Carter, 1971, which stars Michael Caine, and Get Carter 2000, which stars Stallone. Okay, now on to production companies. The production company for the original Get Carter was MGM, an American production company. The film was made by the British arm of the company, and at the time they were beginning to close it down because MGM had a lot of financial trouble. When it was made, it had a budget of $750,000, but it is unknown whether it was dollars or pounds, and there are still some arguments over this. The main producer was Michael Klinger, who purchased the rights to the 1969 novel Jack Returns Home, written by Ted Lewis. The original was also distributed by United Artists in the US, but it was poorly promoted, so wasn't very successful. It was also distributed in countries like the UK, USA, South Africa, Belgium, France, Turkey, Spain, Germany and Mexico. The production for the remake of Get Carter, starring Sylvester Stallone, was a collaboration of several different companies: Morgan Creek Productions, Franchise Pictures, Canton Company, Epsilon Motion Pictures, Carter Creek Productions, and Franchise Pictures. As there were so many companies involved, and most were big companies, the budget was much higher than the UK original. It had a massive $64 million budget. There were also a lot of distribution companies involved this time to make sure the film was distributed effectively globally to ensure maximum earning potential. These companies included Warner Bros. Pictures, Warner Bros. Cosmopole, FD, Warner Soge Films, AIE Ralato Films, AG Warner Bros. Entertainment. The film was distributed across a range of media, from VHS and DVD to the cinema, and distributed across countries like the USA, Sweden, Russia, Switzerland, Japan, Argentina, Germany, France, Netherlands, Spain, the Middle East. This suggests that the American film industry has a monopoly where all the big studios own distribution companies and cinemas around the world, so they can easily release the films in multiple countries, especially because they also have the big budgets to promote the film in a dozen countries where the British industry does not have this big monopoly, or the big production companies that have massive budgets, so they can't release films in a dozen countries and afford to promote the film everywhere it's distributed. The marketing of the Get Carter original was done by MGM and Anglo EMI Film Distributors Ltd. The producer Michael Klinger also helped with marketing because of his previous background as a distributor. Michael Klinger oversaw the promotion of the film in the UK. He made sure there was a Get Carter poster on every London bus. There were also several different posters made for Get Carter original, which was created by uh, Orlando Puzzi. There was one poster with Get Carter wearing a gaudy floral jacket. The, the poster's places Carter's shotgun in Eric's hand and features a grappling man and woman that appear to belong to a different film. There was a poster that showed Carter holding a pump-action shotgun, but in the film Carter has a double-barreled shotgun. There was also a poster that shows Carter on the phone holding a pistol. These posters all have one thing in common, and that is that they all have guns in them. As well as this, most of them featured Carter. That, as well as this, most of them feature Kane, the main character. I think this is done as it promotes the film as a kind of action film, which is unusual for British films. And that has some gunfights in. And in a way, the film almost features a mysterious character in the poster, as no one knows who Carter is, just that he's holding a gun. So it encourages the audience to think, why has he got a gun? What is going on? And the only way to find out is by watching the film. So the curiosity and the not knowing ends up promoting the film and gets people to watch it. Posters were used to promote the film mainly because of the low budget that Klinger had to work with, but also because that was the main way to promote films in those days, as film trailers, particular film trailers shown on TV, were rare. They were mainly shown in cinemas. There was a French poster produced showing the person that killed Carter pointing a sniper rifle at Carter, and it shows the sight of the sniper rifle. This is a very bad idea as it already shows the audience what is going to happen in the end before they've even watched the film. So why would the audience want to go and see a film if they know what happens? It's pointless. So they won't bother going to see the film. There were so many posters made to promote the film because that was really the main form of film promotion at the time. Unless they showed a trailer, which would be rare. Unless people saw the trailer at the cinema. The Get Carter Hollywood remake was marketed and promoted by Warner Bros. Because of how big the company is and how high the budget for the film is. Film trailers appeared all over TV, about twice a day on peak times. There was also a poster made for the remake, which differs from the original poster quite a bit, because it looks a bit like Stallone is posing for a photograph, as he's got his suit on, except he's got his gun out casually standing there with his sunglasses on. The poster is also black and white, where some of the posters from the original Get Carter are in colour. The other difference is there is only one poster for the remake, where there are several for the original. This is because the marketing strategy has moved towards trailers rather than posters. The posters were shown on buses, bus stops and billboards, but the trailers were the main way to promote the film. The exhibition circumstances of the original UK Get Carter and the Hollywood remake differ quite substantially, because even though they were both exhibited in the cinema, the original was never broadcast nationally on TV until 1986 on a post-Watershed BBC. It was, however, broadcast on some other minor channels. It was shown on LWT in 1976 and in 1980, where they showed the edited for television version, and once on Westward Television. Interestingly, the original was not distributed on VHS until 1993, after Warner Bros. Acquired the distribution rights. The film was then reissued on special edition DVD on October 2000 in order to promote the Hollywood remake. It was almost part of its advertising. The remake of Get Carter was released in cinemas on the 6th of October 2000 and was exhibited on video in the UK on the 24th of June 2002. The film Get Carter would have also been shown on TV and was released on February the 13th, 2001 in the US on video. The companies that are part of the American film industry are much bigger and have a monopoly where there is vertical integration. For example, Warner Bros., where they own production, distribution and marketing companies, so they can operate at any stage of the production, which allows them to buy the rights to the video release of Get Carter in 1993, and it also allows them to promote the video when it was released because of the vertical integration. But then with the remake, they went one step further and re-released special edition DVD to promote the Hollywood remake. So they are very smart, as by promoting the new special edition DVD, in effect, at the same time, they are actually promoting the remake, the US remake, by saying they're releasing the DVD to sort of mark the remake. So it's almost as if it's celebrating the release of this remake. The British film industry does not have this monopoly where these big companies that have vertical integration. So a British company simply couldn't afford to buy the video rights, which is partly why the video wasn't released until 1993. And the company that did have the rights, I think, did not have the budget to be able to release the video and to successfully promote it. As essentially, British companies generally only form one part of the production process, and they are either a producer, distributor, or marketer. And even when a British company does get a good foot through the door, they are generally very small, as they are competing against the big American companies, because they own every stage of the production through vertical integration. So their prices are much cheaper, when it's much cheaper for them to make films. So in retrospect, the British film industry is always destined to fail, as British companies can never get enough money to be able to set up multiple companies, so they can build a monopoly that has vertical integration, which would greatly benefit the industry, as it means film production would be cheaper, and we wouldn't have to rely on the big American companies, because they can't get enough work and turn enough profit to build these companies. So as they are always competing against the Americans, who can do it cheaper and faster. And if by some miracle a British studio starts to become successful, they are bought off by the Americans because they get a chance, before they get a chance to get the capital to build a company with vertical integration. For example, look at how Universal bought out Working Title Now they own 67% of the company, which are, may I add, the controlling interests. The stars in the original film were mainly all British actors, with Michael Caine, a 1960s British star, in the lead. The Hollywood remake had bigger globally known actors, for example Sylvester Stallone. Caine wasn't as big as an actor as he is now, whereas in the Hollywood remake, Stallone was a big shot American actor who was really famous at the time. With the original Get Carter, it was received socially as quite shocking to a degree because of the amount of violence, drug taking, and sex scenes within the film. People simply just weren't used to films like that, so it's a shock to the system, so to speak. This was due to a relaxation of censorship. That's how the film was made, because of a relaxation of censorship. Some key issues that had not been socially, the film highlighted some key issues that had not been previously addressed in this way. For example, drug taking, violence, prostitution, and pornography. Politically, the films highlighted how the mob underworld worked in places like Newcastle and showed potential problems with organised crime getting out of control. The British audience was grudgingly more appreciative of the film's technical excellence, but dismayed by the complex plotting, the excessive violence, and immorality, in particular Carter's apparent lack of remorse at his actions. Politically, there is nothing directly linked to Get Carter, but around that time there was a lot of economic depression, unemployment rose, and there was social unrest, with the growing emphasis on the class system. Caine and Hodges had ambitions to produce a more gritty and realistic portrayal of on-screen violence and criminal behaviour in a British film. Caine incorporated his knowledge of real criminal behaviour, of real criminal acquaintances, into his characterisation of Carter. Hodges and cinematographer Wolfgang Suzuki drew heavily on their background in documentary film to try to make the movie as realistic as possible. This, combined with Hodges' research into the contemporary criminal underworld of Newcastle, in particular the one-armed bandit murder, made the film gritty and shocking. In the remake, Get Carter, they changed the setting to Seattle, but in the present day, they also changed Carter into a New Vegas mob enforcer working in the casinos, where previously Carter was a London gangster who did some work for some organised mob bosses called the Fletchers. They changed Brumby into a loan shark, who was previously some rich businessman who owned all the arcades on the East Coast. Kinnear was changed to a wealthy computer mogul who was previously a mob boss. Pace is changed into a local boss who was previously a chauffeur for Kinnear, who was an old associate of Carter's. In the UK original film, Get Carter, Carter is killed by a hitman because he was shot through the head with a sniper rifle. But in the US remake, Carter lives and gets into a car and drives to Las Vegas. All these factors are changed in the remake so the film can appeal to modern audiences who have adapted socially over the last 30 years since the original. People nowadays don't want to watch a film that is about a small-time gangster from Newcastle with an ending where the protagonist dies, but they want to watch a film about some big shot mob enforcer who just goes around reaping havoc, causing problems and beating people to a pulp who get in his way, no matter the consequences. In the UK original, it is more about revenge and bringing his brother's killers to justice, but Carter gives them the old style kind of justice where the punishment is death for killing the people he cares about. It is almost more about treating the killers how they treated his brother, where with for example, with the scene where Carter makes Eric drink that bottle of whiskey, just like he made Carter's brother drink the bottle of whiskey, so his death looks like an accident. Where with the US remake, it's not even really about revenge. Sure, the people killed Carter's brother, but Carter kills them and beats them to a pulp, not for revenge, but because he enjoys it. The fact that they killed his brother is irrelevant. It just gives him a good excuse to do what he enjoys. It just gives him a good excuse to do what he enjoys anyway. Films like this sell, as nowadays we care less about the script and are more interested in seeing big explosion, gunfights and fights to the death, which are fast-paced and action-backed and never stop, which is exactly what the US remake does. Because the Hollywood industry is all about spectacle and high production values. The UK original didn't have many censorship issues. The only thing that worried the censor was a stabbing scene, and in some countries like South Africa, a sex scene was edited out. The target audience for the original Get Carter was mainly adults. At first it was rated X, and it got changed to an R, meaning people under 17 could view it if they were with an adult. In the late 1960s, film censorship relaxation produced an increase in dark, uncompromising films, with many directors pushing the boundaries of accessibility. Get Carter was one of the films that explored this freedom, explains Wikipedia's Get Carter page. There was a 9-minute shorter version that was edited due to censorship and released in West Germany, while in South Africa, the phone sex scene with Britt Ekland was edited out by the censors. The original was rarely shown on TV, but when it was shown on the LWT channel in 1976 and 1980, a borderized version was shown. That again edited out the phone sex scene for TV viewing. In terms of censorship issues with the US remake, there wasn't really any, mostly because what is deemed socially acceptable to be shown on the screen, especially to increasingly younger audience, has changed over the past 30 years. In the films that are rated 15, it is now commonplace to see drug-taking, violence and mild sex scenes, as long as it is not glamorized and essential to the plot, which is why Get Carter did not face any censorship issues. If you look at the original, the sex scene and the sub scene were censored because it wasn't deemed morally right or acceptable to show these events occurring. but attitudes have changed towards it. So a lot of scenes similar to these are not censored in modern day. You have to remember that the public with censorship in films, it is controlled by society's views and morals, and what the public feels are acceptable to show. So when these boundaries of what is deemed acceptable change in society, then censorship changes in response. Audience research for Get Carter. The reviews vary widely in terms of the UK original compared to the US remake of Get Carter. The US remake received mainly negative reviews, where the original received mainly mixed reviews. Initial UK critical reaction for the UK Get Carter was mixed, with British reviewers grudgingly appreciative of the film's technical excellence, but dismayed by the complex plotting, the excessive violence, and unmorality, in particular Carter's apparent lack of remorse at his actions. This is because the film was socially shocking and people weren't used to films like this that showed excessive violence, drug taking, or sex scenes, as it was deemed socially unacceptable. So when people saw this film for the first time, it was a massive shock to the system. When the British reviewers said they are appreciative of the film's technical excellence, I have to agree, and I think the reason this was picked up on in Get Carter 1971 is because they weren't used to films looking as professional or as well shot as Get Carter in that time period. It broke the boundaries with its raw, gritty representation. Describing the initial critical response to the film, Stephen Chibnall wrote, initial critical vilification or indifference established the conditions in which a cult can flourish. Get Carter has to make do with the ambivalence. He thought the general stance of British critics was to admire the film's power and professionalism, while condemning its immorality and excessive violence. Geoffrey Mayer observed that mainstream critics at the time were dismayed by the film's complex plotting and Carter's lack of remorse. In Sight and Sound, Tom Milner said the film was well constructed and had good characterization, but lacked the mystery and charisma of the early American crime films. It being an avenging angel or authentic post-permissive anti-hero revealing in the casual sadism. Whilst George Melly, writing in The Observer, confessed to vigorously enjoyment of it, but admitted it was like a bottle of neat gin swallowed before breakfast. It's intoxicating, alright, but it will do you no good. The fact that the UK film has established a cult following shows the film's popularity amongst audience, even if it was only a small dedicated cult following Get Carter. Get Carter is one of the few films that maintains a cult status, and that shows its stopping power, even if it was not the best performing film at the box office that year, or even if it didn't win any awards. To me, this shows that the film's characteristics are very popular with a proportion of the audience, and it shows a real understanding and appreciation amongst the cult fans. Again, the fact that the audiences condemned the excessive violence shows that it was socially shocking for people to handle. It was also socially revolutionary, as the film confronts many issues like organised crime and the class system, which I think is why it was popular with the working class at the time. As Mayer says, I think the audience would have been dismayed and confused by the complex plotting as the theme had a multi-strand narrative with a number of different themes and plot lines going on. For example, revenge, adultery, violence, betrayal, social injustice, and crime. While Carter was trying to find out who murdered his brother, he was also faced with problems back in London with his mob bosses, as well as that going on. He's also having an affair and having to deal with a lot of his own personal issues at the time. So this was a lot for the audience to focus on all in one film. Steve Chimble writes that America was rather more used to hard-boiled storytelling, and that reviewers there were more prepared than British critics to treat Get Carter as a serious threat. This review suggests to me that the Americans and the British had two very different understandings of the film, which is why it would obviously be received differently. I understand to an extent why the Americans treated it as a serious film. This was because, in essence, it was a film that covered real issues that the British people were currently going through. And in reality, the film was not made as a joke, even though some bits are funny. Instead, the film was meant for some hard-boiled storytelling, as Chimble states, which the Americans are used to. Paul Khaled admiring its calculating soniness and wondering if it's signified a new genre of virtuoso viciousness. US publication Box Office Magazine gave a cautiously approving review describing the film as nasty, violent, and sexy all at once. They predicted that it should please in the action market but won't win any laurels for Cat. Although his portrayal of the vicious anti-hero impressive, they also thought that tighter editing would have helped considerably. Based on the review given by the US publication Box Office Magazine, I would argue that the Americans have misunderstood the film to an extent, as the film was never meant as an action film. It was meant as a gritty portrayal showing people what 1970s Newcastle was like socially and politically. And it's about showing the audience the struggles people face. But the magazine has picked up on an important point. The film has multiple themes and is nasty, violent and sexy all at once. Roger Ebert was less reserved in his praise, writing that the movie has a sure touch. He noted the proletarian detail of the film, which is unusual in a British detective movie. Usually we get all flash and no humanity, lots of fancy camera tricks, but no feel for the criminal strata of society. Of Kane's performance, he wrote, the character created by Kane is particularly interesting. He's tough and ruthless, but very quiet and charged with a terrible irony. Judith Christ in New York Magazine gave a glowing review saying Michael Caine is superb, suave and sexy, and describing the film as a hard, mean and satisfying zinger of the old tough tech school done in frank contemporary terms. The film appeared on several US critics' lists of best films of the year. I think both audiences have understood the definition that goes into each character and the unique features that each character has, which helps create this atmosphere where the film has been able to experiment and expose a number of social and political problems. Politically, Kane's character Carter stands out to the audience, not just because he is the main character, but because importantly they realise how good his portrayal of the character he plays is, because Kane has managed to build a character that is so dynamic that he is tough, ruthless and charged with a terrible irony all in one, as Ebert points out. This review highlights why the film is so successful, even today as it maintains its cult status. The reviewers seem to understand that a lot of work has gone into the background story, in the story of every character, no matter how minor. This is probably why the film feels so realistic. The audience also seems to understand that Carter is much more than just some mindless action film. There is actually a point to the violence. The film, the film shows instead of it just being for entertainment. The review highlights why the film overall was generally well received despite mixed reviews when it was first released. Get Carter US Remake Audience Research and Critical reaction was negative. The film received a 12% favourable rating amongst the critics. Tracks by Rotten Tomatoes, it did not do well at the box office, with a worldwide taken of approximately $19 million, less than the production budget of nearly $64 million. This shows just how badly the US remake was received and how much people hated it compared to the original. I think this also highlights that all the changes they made to the film, like location, time period, plot and characters, so the film would appeal to American audiences, just didn't work and was not even popular with the Americans themselves, let alone the British. In my opinion, the US remake is just another example of a remake that's literally destroyed and tarnished the original. Among the positive reviews, Joblow.com praised the sharp turn given by Sly Stallone, its groovy tunes and its generally dark and gritty nature. Rob Blackadder of Spliced Wire called the film simulating visual showcase of stylish filmmaking that keeps a viewer's attention. Chuck O'Leary of FullViewDriving.com said that the original Get Carter is better. This is quite watchable as far as modern era remakes go. These reviews point out some of the film's good features that critics picked up on and enjoyed seeing. I agree that the film was gritty like the original, and this shows no matter how audiences have changed socially, they still enjoy a gritty film, even more so than they did when the original was released. The social standards have changed. As O'Leary highlights, the original Get Carter is better, but this shows that the audience of the US is better, but this shows that the audience of the US remake is worse, but still watchable. However, this is what some of the critics think the audience opinions. However, this is what some of the critics think. The audience opinions differ. Sean Levy of the Portland's Origin gave an average review saying that while the film doesn't touch the original, it doesn't hit rock bottom either. Kevin Thomas of the Los Angeles Times said the film is not a terrible movie, but too rooting for its own good. Mark Savalov of Austin Chronicle said the film itself is a muddle. What is good is Stallone. Bob Graham of the San Francisco Chronicle said the film is murkier than it needs to be, through no fault of Stallone's. These critics were a bit less generous with their praise, but now they are basically sitting on the fence saying it was okay, but it wasn't bad. I think some audiences in America would share these feelings, less so than the British audiences. I thought Stallone fans would praise his performance, even though it's terrible as other audience members have pointed out. Amongst the negative reviews, Todd McCarthy of The Right called the film a useless remake. Elvis Mitchell of New York Times said the film is so minimally plotted that not only does it lack subcontext or content, but it also may be the world's first movie without even a text. Elizabeth Weitzman of the New York Daily News called the film a throwaway story hidden beneath a messy jumble of weird camera angles, worthless editing tricks, and an ill-placed obnoxious score. The film was also nominated for Worst Actor, Sylvester Stallone, and Worst Remake or Sequel at the Golden Raspberry Awards in 2000. As McCarthy points out, the film was a useless remake as it doesn't really attempt to follow the original in any way. It doesn't even credit the original in the US remake. Instead, it credits that Jack returns home. I think a lot of the audience feels the same way, that it was a pointless remake, that they wasted money on watching. Mitchell points out an interesting point. The film is such a bad storyline, or at least a lack of one, that he believes it's the first film not only without a subtext or context, but even a text. This highlights a massive difference between the UK original and Hollywood remake, as the UK original had a very detailed script where every character had a background story and an important role to play no matter how minor. And yet now the only thing in the Hollywood script is Stallone walking around beating guys to a pulp. This was obviously a big turner for audiences, and I feel this has happened because the Americans have focused so much on the action and fighting in an attempt to entice an audience that they are used to a big action blockbuster with lots of explosion and fast-paced action that normally entertains them, but in the process we've forgotten to write a decent script. These reviews sum up how much the audience hated the Hollywood remake, no matter if they were American or British. From these mistakes and problems the audience have pointed out, it seems that the Americans tried too hard and just went off on their own action blockbuster tangent instead of following the UK original as an example. As one reviewer points out, it seems like everyone on the technical crew had their own agenda, each one trying to outdo each other, and this is perfect to summarise what the Hollywood remake tries to do to the original, but instead it falls flat on its face.